So today we'll be talking about solo practitioners and the paradox that they face. It's a really fascinating topic. Before to do that, I want to also welcome another warm up round. Slow down, allowing people to visit the space, making connection. Because every time that I do these live streams, there's a lot of energy that rush through, and make me feel a little bit anxious, restless. It's connection from the other side, right? Like, I may not know who you are, you may not know who I am. So we are strangers in this way, floating across whatever you were scrolling before this, or whatever you were doing before you were watching this. And now we're here together. It's an interesting new type of intimacy, digital intimacy of these live stream. It's a little bit different from, just making a video, making a post and put it out there. It's also my first time streaming with OBS, so let me make sure that we are live properly. Okay. We are live. So, okay. Now we were saying it's a new type of intimacy where now this is live, it's interactive, you're on the other side of the screen. I don't know who you are, but I can somewhat feel you. And because there's this exchange right now, maybe you were watching the recording, so there's also the pressure of some distant presence that has not yet even happened yet, currently speaking. But you're there, and I'm feeling you. Or maybe you're watching this live right now, whatever the case is. So in today, I'd like to walk through this topic of solo practitioners paradox, where I figured that out of the 2 years something that we've been doing CC bootcamp, back to back, and before that we were doing a year of just trying to establish an online community to gather people together and see how we can build some sort of a digital practice space that come together, discuss, share each other best case practices, allowing there is accountability, a sense of companionship, and take it from there. The reason for a lot of this is that I personally also see that there's a need for myself to have a space like this, where I see that my local surroundings and environment around, well, you have friends and family is very supportive, but they may not be able to understand what the point of a lot of these is. Awakening, having these openings, the tricky destabilization territories that comes after. So this can be very, very hard. Right? So when Frank and I got together in around 2023, so it's almost more than 3 years ago now, we were saying like, okay, let's just get the first people from whenever to really start to practice. And then we started to see all sort of interesting stuff about this phenomenon that now we call solo practitioners. It's not solo in the way of you have zero absolute connection with anybody else, but it's a type of like just walled off that you are your own person in that domain, in that concavity. And even though you consume materials, you read books, you even do retreats, you even talk to other teachers, but there's not really a relationship, right? It's like a 30 seconds per week kind of a Q&A style of interacting with a teacher. Or it's like a 10 days of a retreat with 50 other people. Well, if you do Vipassana, you don't really talk at all. So there's always this, even though that we're doing this alongside other people, there's always that distance. Not really that intimacy. And the people who may be intimate with us, whether that's our significant other, our children, the friends we grow up with, they care for us, they're still around, but they don't really do this stuff. Right. So today we'll be looking into this. The solo practitioner's paradox, the freedom plateau, and the missing mirror. So like I was saying, that who are solo practitioners? These are modern Dharma practitioners, people who is on the path of cultivation towards awakening, right? Towards true seeing, Dharma in that way. So we learn through books, online courses, we do occasional retreats, maybe once a year. But for whatever reason, and we'll go into the pros and cons, the benefits and the cost, that we don't establish long-term commitment to either any teachers, any traditions, or any communities. So in this category, solo practitioners are usually very self-driven. Like you can discern what works, what doesn't work, and you're capable of developing your own practice from the vast ocean of available teachings out there. And you craft something that works for you. What's interesting that we'll go later on is that how similar we end up at a very, very spot and destination, like the plateau that we're talking about. Yeah, and these practitioners, we value autonomy above all. The reason why I say we as well, and not just they here, is I also see myself in this bucket. For the longest time, I just don't feel like going to. I was growing up in Vietnam. There's a lot of meditation options to go to courses and all that, but I just don't gravitate towards that. I'd rather just have my own path, have my own journey, map out. There is a lot of emphasis that we feel is important to have autonomy, to have sovereignty. Maybe that we've been burned by rigid hierarchies where certain teachers from certain traditions just gave us the wrong advice. It may not even be because they are incapable of giving advice or anything like that, but maybe they just don't know us, or maybe they have too many students, right? They have hundreds of students that trying to work with, or like there's some teachers that's just straight up dogmatics, that they just very convinced that their way is the way and there's no other ways. And those teachers usually, we know like, oh, okay, we're not really here to just trying to, listen to someone trying to convince us about one truth. We want to figure it out for ourselves. Or communities just demand conformity. Like this is one way we're going to do this and one way alone. So we want what we want, and that's awakening on our own terms. So let's talk about the advantages of this journey. So advantage of this would be, first and foremost, is freedom from external constraint. Like we were saying, no dogmatic doctrines or rigid structure dictating your path, no gatekeepers, controlling access to teachings and experiences. I do believe that if we kind of like been around certain communities, I see the message. We're rather working on ourselves because there is this freedom from external constraint that if we have sovereignty over our schedules, over the methods, over the pace, we are fully responsible for our journey, and we prefer that. And that's actually a very empowering stance to take, rather than just overly reliant or being very sycophant, like just always bowing and always, having that kind of savior coming to rescue us in that way. No, like we want to roll up our sleeves and do something about it, right? We have that go-getter mentality, and maybe that's also show up in the ways that not just so-called spirituality, but always the case that you be living your life, not just meditation, right? It's also the way you show up at work, also the way that you build a relationship, also the way that you want to carve out a path, a purpose for yourself. And a lot of times, I was just saying that when we roll around certain communities, they also have this weird sense of, oh, I've been here before, you must, those kind of attitude. And we're just like, I don't know about that. So there's all these freedom that we can have if we take things into our own initiatives. We can go at it. The second thing is connecting to a much bigger perspective is individual excellence, is that we can cultivate our own personal space, inner purpose, like we were saying, that maybe a lot of for a solo practitioner, you are someone who also know how to even build a life that you would enjoy, actually doing work that you find meaningful, and sort out this thing about the gap between practice and the rest of life. And you're actually doing something about that and not just trying to meditate your way out of your discomfort. No, you're actually also like, going to the gym, work on your bodies, work on your relationships, and all these things. And through this is so much freedom to experiment, to synthesize, to innovate across multiple traditions. You take a little bit from Christianity even, you take things from the Gnostic tradition, you take things from Sufi, you take things from Hinduism, from different strands of Buddha Dharma, all those things. And there is this possibility that emerge when you just sit through all of those things, right? And what's also most important to point out is the confidence that you get from just figuring these things out, let it cook, let it simmer, and then you make the discovery that, you're starting to see the bigger picture of how these different traditions, they differ in certain ways, they optimize those different things, and then you make a very well-informed decision of what works for you, currently speaking. Yeah. So for many of us, we don't want to compromise that sovereignty, and we even, maybe the promise of Dharma practice, the cultivation towards awakening, towards total illumination, we don't want to compromise. You don't want to bend to someone else's visions of what awakening should look like. You do it in your own way, right? But of course, as we do this, there's also the hidden cost that after a couple years, maybe even a decade of doing this, we're starting to see that, there seems to be a certain kind of plateau that we kind of get stuck on. That's going to be very tricky to move forward from this. And let's talk about it. So, all right, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a big topic about this thing. So the hidden cost of this, maybe something that we feel the deepest is the sense of isolation. Even like we were saying, even that we have a functional life with romantic relationships, with friends around that we grew up with, all these things like workplace, blah, 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 there still could be that isolation, just loneliness. But in terms of technicality, why there's a cost towards our own practice if we gravitate towards awakening is that there could be just confirmation bias without any correction. Like we have insights, we have opening, whether that is on a retreat, using psychedelic, in our sits, or just going about in our daily life. We have openings, we have awakening experiences and moments of unions and all that. But we don't really have any people around us to be able to check. So therefore, after a while, it becomes a problem like, where am I on the path? After a couple of years of that, it's become like, how do I move forward? And then we start to see patterns just playing out again and again. I should have been over this by now. You say that to yourself like 5 times. Because then we're starting to see how the impermanence, the cycles of insight happen in real time. Because there's that rising up, a rising and passing, things being let go, you surrender deeper into the path, and then stuff come up, you dive headfirst into a series of destabilization, and you have to pick yourself up from the bootstrap. It's very, very destabilizing to do that without any kind of support, because people around you don't know you, don't know what you're going through in that way, and you optimize for doing this by yourself. So when those things happen, it's really challenging. If you've been there and you've experienced like months of you can't work, there's days that you don't even want to get out of bed. There's consideration about just forget about both world, like the spiritual world over here and we got the mundane world over here. Just like, I'm just tired of all of it. It's very challenging. Because the crisis comes after that opening. Now, previously you were kind of like muted. You suppress or you just ignore those things. But comes up with the awakening is all these materials, all this stuff. Right? So the ego death, the non-dual recognition, the collapse of the separate self, yada yada yada. It's followed by your disorientation. Now you don't know what your values is anymore. Things that used to really captivate and capture you is no longer interesting. You don't know what you live for anymore at times. That could be pretty destabilizing. And there could also be like the jadedness, especially if there is multiple cycles and you spend a couple of years where even if you do retreats, sure, there's like 2 months of opening and then it's back again. That could get us jaded real fast. And the loss of heart when the paths forward just become unclear because you do have these openings, you do have these experiences that people talk about online, but the integration for the rest of life, they just say that, oh, I'm integrating. But like, okay, how? What specifically? What's the structure now? And then, like, understandably, a lot of us take the route of now, okay, shadow work and inside work can no longer be separated. You must grow. Now it's also coupled with the process of maybe therapeutic models, being more somatic, going to your body again, actually working out, taking care of your finance, taking care of relationship around you, paying the karmic debt that got you to those openings. Now you're doing all that. But then it just become a massive, like in, out cycle. You got some openings and things seem to collapse again. You got some openings and things seem to collapse again. Right. So this is the disorientation after that. And yeah, maybe I can talk more about at this moment about these kind of sense of cost is that after a while, I think once we have nailed down, like there's certain instruction about how to sit, how to open your body up. You can sit for an hour and you be able to make that into a consistent habit somewhat, like sure, when life gets really busy or chaotic or challenging, practice drop off, but then you get bounced back again and you keep doing that, right? And you'll probably be able to be fairly confident of having the capacity to manage your emotion, to regulate your stress. That's no longer a problem. You're not just meditating for, clarity or a stress-free state anymore. Maybe you're starting to get to the point that experience doesn't really matter that much. The highs and lows, you've seen enough of it. It's just like whatever. So what to do now? It doesn't feel like this is the end yet, but maybe this destination, at first we experience it, it feels so total because it's an opening, right? Once there's an opening, it feels like a complete, new trajectories in life, a lot of new things opening up. And then at this point, we're starting to appreciate what's meant by samsara, the loop. We're starting to see that, like a 5-year cycle things. We're starting to see like causal loop. The thing that we thought we left behind or we got over it by now comes back to be reintegrated. But then the more we're trying to push forward, we just keep repeating this loop. Right. And we also don't really know how to assess ourselves because when the moment of regression, when we feeling like we're being teleported back into the past, having to face our shadows or whatever, it feels like we haven't meditated at all. Like all this is for nothing. That could be very, very challenging to face by ourselves. So, okay, so yeah, we're saying here that if we've seen through the illusion, now what? We see at the edge of integration, we really no map, no mirror, no one to say, yeah, this is normal, here's what comes next. The reason why a lot of times there's no map, no mirror, because we want to do it in our way. So there's really no map of how to be yourself, right? In that way. You're the only person that know how to be yourself. And because there's that optimization to be a solo practitioner, now we have to also take care of the cost. I want to break down in more specific in terms of the 3 plateaus, about like these 3 core capacity that allow us to get really far in our journey, but then become the new dead ends, the plateaus. And how without relational friction, each of these eventually become a very big trap. So we start with the first one, which is strong determination. The initial power is essentially a long series of cultivation to sit through the resistance. Just having the ability, like, you know what? When I first started this, I could barely sit for 20 minutes, but through, grind work, just putting in the reps, just dedicating time to it, you get to 60 minutes, get to 90 minutes, get into 2 hours of like, okay, this is what it feels like to sit for 2 hours. You know how to focus your attention. You know how to zone in, how to absorb into the moment, and maintain that applying sustained attention. And this get even to the point, like you have different jhanic access, having the capacity to bend your experience to the way that you like it. But then after a while, it becomes a dead end in the way that whatever you insist reality to be, it just becomes that. So then reality just conforms to your vision. But you're also trying to go beyond your vision. So now you're just kind of always like kind of confused. Because if we start chasing a self-fulfilling prophecy of what this should be like, we always find ourselves to be grasping onto the moment and trying to alter it. That's why we constantly going into this phase of trying to tweak it, trying to make it more pleasant, more blissful. Right. So after this, a lot of practitioners actually switch in their practice into the second core motive, which is, oh, interesting. So what is a self-structure that is dictating, that is bending, that is choosing all these trajectories? And we go into the phase of critical analysis. We can say that this is a self-inquiry practice, this is a metacognition practice, this is developing self-awareness, this is expanding awareness practices. So now it's just not about like zoning in, but it's also like turning and looping that inward. So ability to deconstruct concept, ability to go beyond your vision and see through illusion and starting to recognize bigger and more hidden patterns. But then we have another problem after a while of this. Number one, it could be also very destabilizing if you made a habit out of constantly watching your thoughts. You almost like get paranoid of yourself, about being yourself. Constantly like, nobody home, there's no self, so nobody home. And all these lingo. So you're just hovering as a bodiless, spacious awareness. Sure, there could be like an intellectual understanding of an emptiness, but it can't be embodied. So you're always kind of watching your own experience. And I guess this is the phase that it can be dangerous because we can mistake disassociation for so-called equanimity. We mistake not caring as if it's somehow like an achievement. Sure, like it's necessary to be detached, like, it's like a scientist watching an experiment, but that experiment is your life. So then if you find yourself being in an argument with your significant other and more interested in, analyzing how you're being triggered than actually genuinely developing a connection with your wife, your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, it's a really interesting state to be in. It's almost that you become completely self-absorbed, that just loop back and just watch yourself endlessly. And this is the phase where we got so much new vocabulary about the way we behave, the way we function, how our mind moves, but everything just stays still very distant. Right? It's like we are watching our life fading away. So the next core practice, naturally also come after this, is also the type of surrendering and letting go. Now, the initial power of this is like, okay, I can't just be, really determined and just lock in all the time and trying to focus. I also can't just be trying to analyze everything. It's maybe at this point we're sick and tired of everything, so we choose to just let go of agency even. Like the ability to dictate what's going on. So now we develop the capacity to release control, to trust the process, and to allow the transformation to flow through. And this is generally maybe a great breakthrough for a lot of us when this third gear starting to switch in, be able to do that. But of course, now it's also generate the other side of the dead end, which is now we make this a thing. We make surrendering and letting go into an ongoing activity. The same way we made like the determination of focus or the critical analysis into a thing. We can't help but just be like grasping into it, clinging into it. So now it's fading away of your agency. Now it's about passive participation. If the flow doesn't flow, you can't act. So it's just more, it's being pretty mean about it, but this is sometimes in CC we're using the word like non-dual zombie to describe people at this stage. It's just like fading and not trying to take responsibility for anything. And somehow believes in an ostrich in the sand manners that this is, as long as I'm just fading away, everything will be all right. I mean, usually this could be very challenging because that means that after a while, you may finally wake up and find that your life been thrown away for 5 years and nothing really changed. Actually, career lost, relationship falling apart. We made the wrong bet. Yeah, because when you don't take care of things in this way, somehow you trust there is some sort of divine providence that always watch over us. Right? We may be surprised that you actually lost agency because you chose not to take responsibility for your life. I made this mistake too. Like, I'm not just, calling you out on it. All these phases we're seeing that, it makes sense, right? It makes sense that this is a developmental phase. First, we must be able to sit down, be calm ourselves, be focused, and then we're able to watch our observation. Then we'll be able to let go. But the challenges and the pointing out towards sunyata, emptiness, is be able to do this without making it into a new ground, making it into a new thing. But it's so challenging to not do that, right? And now, gone through all of this, now it's like, okay, the surrendering and letting go, that's also now become a new trap. Let me focus again. So back to strong determination. And then this becomes the mechanism of a long plateau where you just switch from one to the other, to the other, to the other. Sure, there's some progress, but the fundamental clinging that always want a certain ground to be beneath you, to be reality, to be a certain type of way, that's never really got challenged. That structure never got challenged. Because anytime you made a switch from one dead end to the other, it feels like you made it. It feels like a genuinely final breakthrough. Like, oh my God, this, like, I'm so locked in. Everything is just spacious, and I'm just here. It feels like that. Or like, you see the cell structure, you see how it is formulated, and you see how it resolves itself. Like, oh, I saw it. I got the inside. And it could feel like the final one. Or the last one, like the spacious abiding, that you just allow and things are really having good condition flowing for you and everything just click in your favor. It can really feel like so-called the intuitive sense of embodiment is the final answer. You don't need to think anymore. But then you do your taxes or, your money runs out and then you have to re-engage. So here we're saying that the very qualities that got us to awakening become the obstacles to further stabilization. Determination then becomes rigidity, analysis becomes hovering, detachment in that way. Surrendering becomes passivity. And without a mirror, we can't see this happening as it's happening. We only see it like a couple of months later or like a couple of years later even. Or I was just talking to Frank and Frank was mentioning that, people can just stay in this plateau and call it a destination. Because if people only share their experiences, they would only share the moment of the dead end becomes a new motive. And they would always share this pattern of opening and like a massive thing happen. And people only want to hear about those highlights, right? They actually don't see the entire arc of it. So it feels like you made it. And people will want to even like, maybe even want you to teach them. And then maybe you can teach them about strong determination, how to enter certain states. But then what are we really doing here? Are we just, like trying to enter cool states? Is that all what we're trying to do? And then it's become like, what are we even doing here? So a lot of people at this plateau, I've seen that there is this trend. It's also like at this point, after a couple of cycles, people just saying like, this whole spirituality thing, it's just not it. And yeah, maybe that would be an appropriate maneuver for someone who has bypassed so much of their life that they just feel like if they have these things, somehow the rest of life would be able to work out even if you don't put in the work. But then they realize that, oh, yeah, I need to take care of them. So switch my focus. But then they drop the whole thing. And not really be able to see what was the problem. Right? So here we're talking about like, okay, the problem is missing relational friction, missing relationships. There's nobody to check you. There's nobody to really challenge you. Your friends or your spouse, your family members, they don't know about these stuff. They don't, most likely. I do hope that you have someone around you to be able to be the guiding force. I have a really loving and supportive surroundings, but they don't know about these stuff. So I feel like, oh, I know better than all these people. Blah, 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 blah. Or even when I hear a certain teacher, but they only know this piece. So I still feel like, okay, I'm just here to make a transaction, to learn this thing, and then I'm out. Not really to be fully seen and received from these teachers. So at this point, it's almost that pleasant states has hit a diminishing return. Like we actually need to go back to the failures, to the muck, to like the unpleasant, the resistance, and just allow all of it to come up. To allow yourself to be challenged, allow yourself to be measured, to have feedback. And that's a decision that you got to make, because the kind of like the comfort that you built from all that years of practice now may be something that you need to let go. Like that entire story, that entire how many years, like 5 years, 7 years, 10 years even. And the container that now can't hold you. So even before, we love our job and all that, and friends and family was great, but we can grow tired of it and just this weight of responsibilities. So I know a lot of solo practitioners have that kind of fantasy about becoming just dropping everything, becoming a hermit, or just going to a monastery, forget about this whole thing, becoming a monk. But of course, we won't do that. So then we kind of get caught between a rock and a hard place, because the practice can't move you forward in your previous way, because it's just repeating your patterns, right? And you can't see your pattern the way that the eyes can't see itself. And the other way is like your container right now, your environment, your friends and family, they also can't point it out for you, because you wouldn't, like they don't practice. So you automatically have a conceited position that, oh, they don't know it, blah, 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 blah. So even though you feel like you're making progress, you're like, oh, I'm getting less triggered, you're just reaffirming the previous pattern. Right? So what to do? You're caught in a liminal space. You're too awake to go back, and you're too isolated to move forward. Right? Because now we have to go back to the beginning of how we design the path, optimizing for sovereignty, optimizing for autonomy, our own way, our own terms, on that. It's like, yeah, what are we going to do to this structure? And would we allow ourselves to be measured by someone else? By someone who we trust? So then, I think like in Vajrayana, they say that at this point, when you have these kind of experience, 80 to 90% of the work is to find that relationship, is to find that, in their tradition would be the guru, but I guess in modern context is to find that community, is to find that dynamics, that group of friends, to be able to, okay, point out to me. So there's an inevitable question here is like, if we're solo practitioner and, we're feeling this ache of recognition We may ask ourselves, hey, have I mistaken, just independence for completeness? Like, do I still run away from stuff? Do I still keep people at a arm's length, like just holding the distance, not really allow people to actually touch you, like heart to heart in that way, in a most sincere manners? Do I still kind of like have an experience in the back of my mind, trying to make everything into a further field for your spiritual practice to enhance your spiritual identity? Am I avoiding community because I fear that I will lose autonomy? I would fear, in a very deep sense, I would lose myself. But it's exactly like, am I fear of being truly seen? Because this then would make things actually consequential. Yeah. And is my practice deepening, or I'm just getting better at maintaining my current structure? Make it more polished, you have more articulation, you have better words for it, but it's still pretty much the same. And a question about what would cost you to let someone into your process, not even as a guru who like weighs over you, but like as a genuine mirror, as a friend who would see you for who you are. Yeah, and I do hope that, with digital access now, we have this possibility that even if in a local proximity, you may not have peoples around that can see you, receive you, recognize you, but we have digital proximity. I mean, you guys are watching the live stream right now. We are here together. We're close in that way. Even if, I don't know where you're at right now, you may be like thousands of miles away from me. And then we kind of contend with the needs, what we actually need, and this may not be what we want. So not necessarily another teaching, like not necessarily more instructions, not even like another awakening cycle, like not another opening and just switching gear from, I was surrendering too much, let's get back to it, let's re-engage. And oh my God, I re-engaged too much. I'm trying to have much again. Let's hover it out. It's going to be another cycle. But it's most likely is a living container, something that talks back, something that challenges you, push back. Relational friction, like we're saying, structural chaos, a sangha of co-practitioner, an embodiment attitude to make it more real, to transform insights into habits, into lifestyle. Right? Structural chaos in this way is to complete the deconstruction cycle and not just because usually at the very close point of we actually see our pattern and have a choice to repattern, to choose how we will be, we flinch away. We're like, like the mechanism of flinch is very interesting, because we could be flinching in the way of fawning over it, like, oh my god, this is happening, oh my god, it's finally happening. That's actually a form of resistance. That's really a form of you unable to absorb it, unable to be with it. Yeah, and relational friction is to point out your blind spot. The interesting about pointing out blind spot from other people is that you must develop trust with them. Because the literal definition of a blind spot is when you get told that you would not be able to see it. So you must trust someone's perception of you more than you trust yourself. But yeah, this is the reason why solo practitioner is that you don't really have that trust. So that's why we stay at that level and we don't proceed. It's a choice. So choice point. We can continue refining our solo practice, maintaining our realization, attending more retreats are probably going to fade into each other. Like, as about 10 retreats that you're still repeating the same cycles, I mean, it's pretty obvious that something deeper is not clicking, right? Or you can feel into this. The next phase of the path requires what you have been avoiding. So what is it that you've been avoiding? So like we were saying here, is there a way to not necessarily surrendering to a teacher and drop your autonomy, drop your sense of sovereignty, not conforming to a tradition of like being imposed on, like this is the way and the only way, of being have that kind of fundamentalist attitude, but surrender to the inevitability of integration, that you need to get over your maybe fear of intimacy, and you need to get over your attachment to a representational form of independence. Like, oh, I have independence because I can do whatever I want. Well, if you do whatever you want, are you free from your own impulse? Right? Which only happens in relationship, in constraint, in friction, in a container that will check you. Yeah, so I think solo practitioner at this phase, you've probably seen enough cycles, you know that this will happen again and again and again until you do something about it. But from what I've seen, that choice could be very threatening even. Like there could be anxiety when you feel into this, of like actually being seen, actually putting yourself into a position to be judged, from someone that you trust to judge you, and not just some not just, like you actually trust. Because I think example for what we observe in CC when we do the bootcamp is that, at first, maybe in the first 3 weeks, people are getting to know each other, starting to share a little bit. But even in week 7 and 8, after we're training consistently for almost 2 months, then the thing actually get challenging. And if someone who is about it, like genuinely interested in growing, they will be willing to let the other come and stab them in their blind spot. It's hurt to be pointed out like, oh man, it's either like hard to accept that is something true about you, or it could be like, how did I not see this? How could I be so blind? It's almost like embarrassing to be that blind to your own patterns. But so the contention with those kind of space are very challenging. And, it takes a genuine dispositional shift, the way that you are, to no longer care about even being perceived as highly spiritual or advanced practitioner. No longer caring about that kind of status game. Because I guess it does come back to some sort of humility to be able to relate with each other, becoming friends, and not just trying to look cool in front of others. Actually being vulnerable. Maybe that would be too much for a lot of us right now. But I guess the choice either is, like we're saying, that this long plateau where it's a form of freedom, but it's a very limited form of freedom. If you like that and you want to stay with that, then that's your choice. But then we'll see that ups and downs, in and out cycle, there's a mechanism to it. There's a reason why it wouldn't stop. I remember my contention with this integration process was that I have a huge opening, and immediately this is when we started CC already. I called a member at that time. I was like, oh my God, I just have this crazy experience, blah, 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 blah. And I really thank him for checking me at that point. He's like, I don't believe it. If you really are interested about, if you find your experience to be genuine, to be authentic realization, then go towards some teacher that can validate or invalidate it for you. And I remember even at the peak of that excitement, wanting to share, receiving that kind of feedback, I feel a sting. And it's like, oh, interesting. There is a sting like this. But I guess like at that point, I know immediately that is the move to make. So shout out to Mike. Thank you for that. That is the move to make. And after that, I was like, okay, let's find some teachers. Let's actually look into some cycles of teachers that I can learn from, going out there, starting to look for it, starting to actually engage with people online, like talking to people, setting up calls, exploring their path, how they got over it, and then exploring that, oh, there is a whole new layers of practitioners that they don't make a big deal out of their practice. They're just cool about it. They have no more to prove. And of course, there's very important roles for Dharma communicators, influencers that help inspire people to put the path on the map for people, like sharing maps, sharing realization. Even the thing that I'm doing now, which is kind of like my version of sharing the mechanism which I observed to maybe help connect with someone. But a lot of practitioners, they just have no interest in talking about their own experience. You gotta find them and like develop a genuine relationship with them so that they'll be open to chatting with you. Overall, I've always found people to be very generous. But if you also don't apply what they're talking about, after a while, they'll stop replying. Because like this guy is not serious. He just wants confirmation. He just wants to feel good. All right, so going through that journey, going through that journey of like, okay, moving beyond validation, but like if there's still a genuine interest in further growth, because I guess at the time I was reading into moving beyond modern Theravada materials, like what we call pragmatic Dharma, into more like, oh, okay, there's also this war of Vajrayana, Dzogchen, the bigger vehicle, the Mahayana in that way. I was reading into it. I'm like, okay, there's clearly a lot of stuff I have no clues about. That was like even before reading about a lot of even the Western side of things. I was like, wow, my world was so limited. I barely knew anything. But I was so convinced how to remember this lesson more thoroughly that when I'm conceited, I literally am convinced that I know way more than I actually do. How do I internalize this lesson? Yeah, but I guess it really comes down to a willingness to continue to be open to new experience. Not just open in a way of like, yeah, come tell me whatever, I'll be open to it. No, like open in a way of systematically sort it out, figure it out, find teachers, find communities in that way. So, I hope this has been somewhat of a worthwhile your time checking in Contemplative CrossFit. We intend to do more of these live stream every week. And if this resonates with you and you find yourself to be a solo practitioner who's circling around whatever this problem is, why you can't move forward, I'll leave a link in the description. Maybe you can have a chat and we'll see how to move forward and whether it makes sense for you to step into a structured way of practice and to finally cross the threshold. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Khan. I work at Contemplative CrossFit. It's nice to meet you. Bye-bye. Have a good one.